scale going on today? Let's take a look at some much smaller islands.
I never dreamt that islands about 50 or 60 miles apart, and most of them in sight of each other, formed of precisely the same rocks, placed under a quite similar climate, rising to nearly equal height, would be differently tenanted. But I obtained sufficient materials to establish this most remarkable fact in the distribution of organic beings.
Charles Darwin's words from his diary of the Journal of the Beagle, in which he describes his famous visit to the Galapagos Islands. Professor R.J. Berry of University College London.
We're not on the Galapagos here. We're in a very different part of the world. We're in fact on Fair Isle, which is just about the most isolated inhabited island in Britain. Fair Isle itself lies 83 miles north of the Scottish mainland. It lies halfway in between two groups of islands, the Orkney Islands and the Shetland Islands. Both these groups of islands have different sizes of island and different animals and plants, both on the different islands and between the different groups. And it's these different animals that we shall be looking at. Why have they come to be different from forms on other islands and the forms we're more familiar with on the mainland?
Here on Fair Isle, traps have been set to catch specimens of the long-tailed field mouse Apodemus sylvaticus, which lives on the less inhabited part of the island. It's a member of a separate race of the animals found here on Fair Isle. Compare it with Apodemus trapped in southern England, the much smaller mouse on the right. This island race is on the whole bigger than our mainland mice, and there are other differences. Evidence suggests that the Fair Isle mice, that's one on the right, are not descended from our mainland field mice on the left. The field mice populations on a number of our small northern islands come from Scandinavian ancestors introduced accidentally by man. And the mouse populations differ slightly from island to island. The skin of a Fair Isle mouse and the skin of a field mouse from Fula, there are slight differences in colour and size. This is the skin of a field mouse from Rum. Again, measurements of many animals show that field mice on this island share certain differences from, say, those on this island, St Kilda. Whenever a small number of animals colonize an island, they carry only some of the genes present in the entire ancestral population, so they'll be different from that ancestral population. Natural selection on the island will act upon these differences. For example, the Rum Apodemus has a greyer underside compared with a specimen of Apodemus from Kilda. Each colour must have been for some reason selected for on its particular island. Isolation of separate populations of the same species on different islands has led to different races. Evolution has occurred. We leave Fair Isle to look at the effects of isolation on populations of another kind of animal which we find on the Orkney Islands not far south. Traps have been laid on Orkney mainland for the Orkney vole, another animal which Professor Berry investigates. This one's been sprung. And there he is. These animals are this time a quite different species from the common voles we find in mainland Britain. They're descended from a vole widespread in continental Europe, again introduced accidentally by traders sailing to our offshore islands from southern Europe. We fly to another of the Orkneys, to Westray. This is typical vole country. There's the entrance to one of their runs in the long grass. And here's a Westray vole, again descended from the same Mediterranean ancestor as the vole from mainland Orkney, but detailed examinations of many specimens show that the two populations have certain differences. The Westray voles on the left, the mainland Orkney animals on the right. Here are skins of voles from 4 different Orkney islands. The differences between them are not immediately apparent, but one thing is clear. They're all much larger than the eastern Mediterranean voles they're descended from. There's a specimen. And from the Guernsey voles, which are of the same continental species. On these northern islands, larger animals lose heat less quickly than smaller ones, and they don't have to be very small to escape from ground predators. Once more, animal populations have, in isolation, evolved differences from the ancestral stock. Living things must have the capacity to transmit